There we go. We have ignition. Welcome, everybody. We're doing a presentation of Heaven and Earth today, which is talking about the connection with fascia to energy. There's a lot. There's a lot to cover in this. Um, this probably would have been, if not an entire day's worth of uh, classes, it could have been an entire weekend. There's a lot to cover. But we're going to try and do this is more like an intro, and we're going to try and cover the basic connection between the two, like kind of solve the mystery between that, because I wasn't aware when I first started my practice that there was such a connection, and and how many layers there are of it, and how that works in so many different ways. Before we get started, are there any questions? Okay. I have a question for you guys. And some of this I know because I know many of you, but how many of you are energy workers already or have had some training in energy? Right. Okay. And then how many of you are actual body workers, are massage therapists as well? Okay, great. And then so hello. And then is there anybody who is neither? Okay, got it. It does not matter. No matter where you are in the spectrum, this is going to benefit you. It is. Knowing this is going to help you understand your body better. It's going to help you to, when you run into problems, it'll help you understand what the mechanism is, and it'll help you to likely find some solutions for it. At least that's my hope. And the more I know about it, the more fascinated I am, and the more it intrigues me, and the more it just I find things. It's crazy, and things that lead to solutions. So before we get started, I think what would be good is to do a little bit of an attunement and a little bit of an energy work so that we could, kind of just get our energy going. How does that sound? Good. All right. So you can do this from your chair, but it's probably better if you can do it standing, you know. So I'm just going to back up and I'm going to take you through a couple of exercises and get us going. All right. Okay. Whew. All right. So just getting going, what I'd like you all to do is have your feet shoulder width apart. If you're sitting in your chair, you can still do some of this. All right. So we're going to have you just kind of pulse on the balls of your feet. Just kind of let your body sort of jangle, if you will. Just kind of pulse just for a little while. And then from there, we're going to have you come onto the toes and then roll back onto the heels, toes and heels. And you can breathe deeply when you're doing it. We're going to do a few more times. And then what we're going to have you do is we're going to have you reach up as if you're picking fruit. Just reach up, stretching out, kind of extending the body and breathing deep. And then when you're reaching up like this, what I'd like you to do is kind of come off one foot and be on only one and just kind of practice on your balance as best you can. You know, you don't have to hold it, but just try. It's a good thing to do. And then when you're ready, come down to the other side, reach up, and then just try and hold your balance best you can. And then come back down. And we're going to have you just kind of sway back and forth. And just kind of let your arms sort of tap what might come up to your shoulder in the front and to about mid back and in the back, just sort of tapping. And then when you're ready, just kind of like shake it out. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do an exercise that's called heaven and earth. So that's kind of appropriate, right? So we're just going to kind of reach down and grab what we imagine to be the earth and all its great goodness and bring it up to cleanse the body through the center of the body, and then bring it out and kind of claim your territory. We'll do it one more time. I'm going to reach down, bring it up, all the way up through the midline, all the way up through the crown, and then down back. And then next, we're going to go upward, the opposite. We're going to go up to the heavens. Take your divine energy down through the crown and all the way through the midline and then back into the earth. One more time. Reach up, bring it down. Just taking in all the goodness and down into the earth. And now we're going to marry the two. We're going to bring the earth up, bring it up and out, claiming your space. And then now we're going to reach up into the heavens and bring it down. And they're just going to stand there for a minute and sort of like take that in, shake it out. And then as you're standing there, once you're done, see if you don't feel some tingling in the fingers, in your body somewhere. Just kind of notice that. Was that a little different than when you first started? I think it probably is, right? Okay, so then now we're going to come back and see it. Any questions so far? Comments? Okay. All right. So we are talking about energy and fascia. We're going to be actually touching more on fascia than energy because many of you already know about energy. But we're going to talk about some cool stuff. All right, what is energy? Just to start out with. Anybody want to talk about energy? If not, yes? Anyone? Okay. Well, energy, we know what energy is. It's the electric current that goes through everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything. At least that's what we adhere to. And it's all through the body. And, you just felt some just then. And, we see examples of it every day. We're doing it right now. This is energy. Radio waves are energy, all kinds of energy. What's cool is that we can find other ways of feeling the energy and whatnot. And one of the things I'd like to take you through is a little exercise, which is kind of fun. I don't know how many of you know about muscle testing, but muscle testing works through the body. You can kind of test certain things that the body's intelligence of what's going on through peripheral movement, or what we call kinesiology. And the way this is done, for instance, your hand is stronger when you clench it and weaker when you open it. So that's more of a peripheral movement. And so what we're going to do is where things show up is that when the body is trying to figure something out, it will cut a little bit of energy to that peripheral movement. So if we're going to take your index finger, for example, and we're going to press down on it with the middle finger, you're going to resist that middle finger pushing down on it. And normally it should be strong. So let's have everyone try that right now. Is everybody strong? Let's see, I don't think I'm seeing everybody, but everyone's doing good? Okay. So now that that's happening, now when we do this exercise, just keep in mind that there may be some people this does not work with, and the reason for that could be that your hydration's not good, or there's another piece missing, and sometimes it means that you need bee pollen or whatever. But for the most people, this is going to work. It's kind of fun. And this is testing your polarity. Your polarity, we're talking about, positive, negative, and neutral, right? And so we're going to test that your polarity is working. So basically, you're going to press down like this. You're going to take your opposite hand and place it on the top of your head. And it still should be strong when you do this. Yeah? Great. Now we're going to take that other hand and we're going to flip it. Now test it. Usually it's weak. It should be the opposite of what you had? Is there anybody, let's see, anybody who this is not working for? Okay. All right, Shelley, do you have any access to some water?
I'm just equally strong both ways.
Okay, that can happen. That can happen. And so frequently, but also try water. And then in many cases, they're saying bee pollen will do it. But for most people, this does work. And it's crazy because it does it instantly. How do we know that? There's all this intelligence and energy that's going on. So this gives you some example. I mean, we always have done the other example when we're doing energy and feeling it between our hands and things like that. But this should give you some idea of what's going on. How's that for everybody? Good? Okay. So knowing that energy is throughout the body, and we know that when there's some form of a block, that we have pain, we have other things like that. So we work on moving the energy. That most of us are pretty clear on. But let's talk about fascia. What is fascia? How many people here know what fascia is? Okay, good. Have a good sense of it? Good. All right. How many people do not know what fascia is? Okay. I think I might be. Okay. So we're going to go into it anyway because I think there's things about fascia that you may or may not know. One of the things, the fascia is tissue that's in the body, right? You know, and we have frequently we talk about a great example of what fascia is we can look at an orange, right? We can look at an orange and go, well, we have the skin of the orange, and then we have, if we go into the orange, we have the inside of the orange, we have the cross sections of the orange, the different compartments of the orange, and then the micro compartments of the orange, right? All those things are fascia. So similarly in the body, the fascia goes from the skin, the top of the skin, all the way through the layers, blood vessels, everything, and down to the covering of the periosteum, right down to the bone. And it has this wonderful role, you know? And what's interesting is, since most of you know a little bit of polarity, we're talking about the originator of polarity, Randolph Stone. He was very, very well versed in fascia. And what's interesting is that I myself started as a body worker. That's kind of my story. And I've been a massage therapist for about 15 years. But somewhere along the way, and I learned a lot about myofascial release and things like that. So I had a sense of all that. But somewhere along the way, I got injured. And it brought me to a place where I needed more energy healing. And I came to polarity therapy. And it really did make a difference. So I'm trying to understand all this when this is going on. This is part of how we got here. And this is what I wanted to talk about. And what was interesting is that I didn't quite understand this connection until one day I was actually after having done polarity and felt like this was really helping me, I was taking a class with a teacher by the name of James Arena. And when he was working, he was doing something different than I'd seen before. And he was working more with the body, even though this is an energy practice, and deeper. And when I was looking at it, I was going, you know what? This looks like myofascial release. Like I'm thinking it is. And when I talked to him about it, he says, well, Dr. Stone worked deeper in the body. He worked with more structure than most people did. In fact, because his background was he was an osteopath, he was a chiropractor, and he was a naturopath, but he was something else. And I found this out in another class, that he was a doctor of nephropathy. And if you've never heard that term applies to a science that is still practiced, but it's largely only in the Midwest, which is very strange. That is like a doctor of connective tissue, a specialist in that. So that was one of the things that he really excelled in. So he obviously had this deeper understanding of it. So that's part of why I really wanted to investigate this, because it's speaking to me on all these levels, right? So today, what I'm hoping to do is give you more of this bridge of what these things are. We're going to talk about that more. And as I'm going through this right now, I want you to be aware of everything that comes to mind for you when we're doing it. Okay. And then we'll have a little fun at the end. So with fascia, most of the components of fascia are made from proteins. And we have, which you may have heard of, is collagen fibers, which are the deeper structure of the cells and whatnot. That's more like the load-bearing part of what goes on. Then we have the elastin fibers, which are the stretchy part. That makes sense because elastin, elastic. And it's like 150 times more, it can stretch more than collagen by 150 times. It's very, very different. Then we have something called reticulin fiber. And that is more for, it creates kind of a netting that protects more of the internal organs. And it's based largely in the center of the body. And then the last part of this is called ground substance. Ground substance is like the great in between. It makes up this kind of gelatinous part of what goes on in there, and it creates all of the cushion and protection in the body. And the interesting thing is that it can change. I don't know if you've ever done that exercise with cornstarch. Has anybody ever done that? Where you actually put some water in cornstarch, and if you go really, really fast through it, it won't let you in. It's like cement. But if you just let your fingers rest in it, it'll sink straight to the bottom. It's a fabulous, fabulous thing to do if you've never done it. And fabulous. And so it can, for whatever conditions, it can change its structure. It can change from being this thicker substance to almost a liquid. And that particular phenomenon is called thixotropy, if you've never heard of that. And so it's the thixotropic effect. Okay. So the wonderful thing about fascia is it's very adaptive. And what they're finding out is it's not only that, it's anticipatory. It can learn. Fascia can learn. And they're trying to understand exactly how it does it. Is it the energy? Is it the hydration? Because they found in a lot of studies that water has memory. So you've heard of cellular memory in the muscles, probably. Well, it's a real thing. It's a real thing. And so the body it's always looking out for you, this kind of thing. But so how does all this work? The interesting thing about fascia is that, and the body, is that, a lot of constructs in our world, like, if you take something like the Empire State Building, for example, and then, then they constructed that, it's layer upon layer upon layer. And so it's kind of a, anti-gravity sort of compression engine. It just stays there, right? But the body is clearly not that. We move around all the time. And what the body really is what's called a it's in the biotensegrity matrix. So it's using that word tensegrity. Does anybody understand what tensegrity is? A show of hands. See, who knows what tensegrity is? Okay, well, there's a misconception that it's the spine that holds up the body. It's quite the opposite. It's everything in the body that holds the spine up. If you think of that, it's a little bit of a mind bender. Think more of like a tent. When we construct a tent, is it the pole that's holding the tent up? Not so much. It's really more the tension on the lines, keeping the canvas and everything else. The pole itself is just there to give it the shape, and everything else is what holds the tent up. Does that make sense to you all? So it's the tension that creates the integrity of the structure, right? Hence integrity. And there's many other examples of that. You can think of the sail on on certain things, or like a kite or other things like that. But in the body, let me take you through an example that shows you some tensegrity in your body. I mean, if you guys want to stand up for a second, this would be great. So like we'll have you stand up and legs shoulder width apart, knees bent. Okay. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take your right shoulder and we're going to just twist it back as we turn. Okay. Notice what's happening to your left foot. Is it doing anything? It kind of is, right? It's twisting. You do the other side. What's the opposite foot doing? Okay, come center, and then now let's say you drop your right hip. What happens to the opposite shoulder? So you can see everything is kind of moving in tandem, right? So that's an effect that is the tensegrity in your body. And thankfully so, because it's constantly having to make adjustments to what's going on. That's how we manage to get through our day and not kill ourselves, really. But tensegrity is great. And so understanding all this, within the fascia itself, there's all these minute little things that are going on. And I'm about to share my screen so I can show you a couple of the images. And we'll go from here. Oh, no, it's not there. Where is it? Share screen. No, hold on one sec. I'm not sure where it went. 1 second, please bear with me. How are we doing so far? Okay. Oops, I gotta get back to the meeting. Here we go. Can you see this? No? Can you see this? Can someone unmute to tell me if you can see this?
We cannot see it, Christie.
Okay, thank you. Let's get out of here. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. How do I get out of here? Oh no. I'm not sure how to do this. Sunil, I don't know how to get out of this.
What are you trying to get out of?
I'm trying to get out of my share. I'm like, it's got full screen and I don't know how to, I don't see any.
Press escape.
Okay. Great. Thank you. I'm clicking on it.
So, oh, there you go. You got it.
Okay. And then present. Okay. Thank you. Sorry. Okay, so here when we're talking about energy, this is kind of an example of what energy looks like in the body. And then of course we have our orange that we talked about in the different sections. And then this is fascia over here. We have On the left, we have, the ground substance, the elastin fibers, the collagen fibers, the reticulin fibers, and then there's a few other things. And then if you look on the right, this is kind of what it looks like. There's little fibers going on inside the body, right? And then here you can see when you've actually created some traction in the body, this is what the fascia will actually do. It will actually lengthen, kind of like when you think about, knit substances, or the tissue in your shirt, your blouse right now. If you pull on it, you'll see that things kind of extend, and it makes these kind of little tubules that can split and lengthen and do all kinds of stuff, but they also transfer liquid. It can be, and it's almost like fiber optics. And then one release will trigger another release. And then this is with, you can see that it just encases it encases the blood vessels and things like that, and they actually affect both sides. So it's kind of like a multi-dimensional situation going on all the time. And you can see that here they are. It's like, again, more like fiber optics than anything. And then why there? And then this is an example of like a tensegrity type of structure. And you can see that these little these lines are holding up the struts. It's not the other way around. And they can move, which is really, really cool. So any questions so far? Just go ahead and unmute yourself if you do. All right. So why do we care about all this? I mean, what do we need to know about this? Well, as I looked into this, what it turns out is that when we go back to those energy lines that I showed you, we have energy lines that go up and down. We call them north-south energy lines. And then we have energy lines that go across the body, which we call east-west energy lines. And then we have energy lines that go in a spiral fashion. And I think most of you are familiar with these. Well, as it turns out, the fascia absolutely lines up with that very structure. It's not even like kind of, it completely lines up with it. So the collagen fibers are exactly aligned with the north-south lines, completely. And the elastin, which makes sense because of stretch, are completely aligned with the east-west. And the reticulin fibers are completely aligned with the spiral. And it's fabulous how they all work together. And it's actually, this is the big reveal, that it's the fascia that conducts the energy. And not, and it's that it conducts it so much faster than the nervous system. The nervous system can do it, but it's 3 times faster. It's instantaneous. That it's like the superhighways. It is like the fiber optics, if you will. And it's the energy that informs the fascia what to do. So it's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You can't really have one without the other. And once I saw that, once I knew that, it changed everything for me. In that every time I touch a body, I'm thinking, what is the energy doing? I'm thinking what's happening in the body and where's that energy going? And then every time I'm doing energy work, I'm thinking, I can see the line of that energy through the body in a way that I never thought of before, because I can see it working through the tissues in a way that I never saw before. I don't know if that helps you, but I think that it might. And then in case in point beyond that, there's something called the piezoelectric effect, which you may or may not be aware of. Who knows what the piezoelectric effect is? Okay, piezoelectric means Um, Piezoelectric actually means pressure electricity. So the brothers Curie, who were related to Madame Curie, discovered, like in the 1880s, something like that, that if you put pressure on crystals, it will create electricity, a current. It will create a current. And so for the longest time, this was something in science and other things like that. And in the body, they were aware that in the bones, if you put pressure on the structure and there's bone, there would be an electric effect. And only recently did they understand that there are crystals everywhere throughout the body, little crystals and proteins and whatnot, so that this effect happens in soft tissue all the time. So putting pressure onto, in the form of either compression or tension by pulling, you're creating little electric effects in the body all the time. And then that can translate into actually chemical effects and other things. I mean, that's a whole nother class in and of itself. But it's fascinating to sit there and see, oh, okay, there's little things going on. It's not that we just think they actually are happening, which is fabulous. And what's really, really interesting is that when this happens, that all these other, it's kind of like a domino effect, that these other things start to happen. So how can we experience this? I mean, we know that when there's blockages in the body, in the energetic body, let's say, that you can feel pain. We sense that when there's blockages, but when there's fascial blockages, it's a similar thing. So, for instance, if we were to just go ahead and grab your finger, and you're going to pull on your finger, and you're going to try and rotate your finger one way or the other. So you can wiggle your finger pretty well like this, right? For most people. But then let's have you hyperextend the finger like this, bring it back, and then try and wiggle it. It's a little harder. Or even better, let's have you bend it. So you're going to flex it and then try and wiggle it. Doesn't really work. So that's where an example of where the fascia is not working well. And same thing is if you link fingers, right? And you're doing this, if you link them really tightly, try and twist. You can't. Let it go out a little bit. Now try. Much easier, right? So that's when you saw on the pictures of the fascia, when there's more extension going on, you have more of that happening. So we're talking about the potential beyond this of not just using the actual body work to create that effect, but you can use energy to do that as well. And it works well. So the other thing, it's kind of like, but the other thing that one of the other things that can affect things is hydration. And so we talk about that, and that is an effect in this too. And we tested when we did our energy things, and those of you, and I mentioned, where it's not working, it's more than likely a situation where you may not be hydrated enough, or they say also bee pollen. But it's kind of like, an example of this would be when you have, let's say, a brand new sponge, and it doesn't really move that much, right? It's kind of like this. And you wet the sponge, and all of a sudden, there's wet moisture, but it moves, right? Because it's hydrated. So it's kind of important to keep that going on. So when we do this, let me give you an example of one of the things that I thought of. It's like, well, how do you marry the two? Why do we care? Because as I mentioned, you can see certain things, but it's when we're working and doing this, let's say, even if you're working on yourself and you're not a body worker and you just want to figure out how to work things out, you have, what can happen is, a good example of this would be if you were, let's say, we all type, we all text, we do things. So we tend to be tight in the forearm area. So I want you to actually just take the opposite hand, and I want you to kind of just with a little bit of pressure pressing in, I want you to pinch that area. Not too hard, just but putting a little bit of solid pressure on it and keeping contact. And we're going to do this for like the next 3 minutes, well, 2.5 minutes. Okay. We're just going to stay there. And I want you, as this goes on, I want you to be aware of what you sense in terms of energy, whatever you think that is. Okay. And sense it, feel it, what's happening, and the pressure as well. Just keep constant pressure. You're going to be kind of pinching a little bit, but more than anything, you're going to be pressing down. And as time goes on, see if it starts to change. I'm already feeling a change. Slowly, slowly, slowly. And what's interesting is not only am I feeling a change here, I'm feeling my fingers kind of coming alive. I'm feeling like sensations in my fingers that I wasn't feeling before this. I'm feeling more blood flow in there. I'm feeling warmth happening in there. If anybody else is feeling anything that they want to share, please, by all means, share it.
I can feel my neck relaxing more.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And it's crazy because now, as I'm doing this, the tissue is getting very soft, very, very, very soft. And it's wanting to kind of unwind and move. We're just hanging out. We're not doing a whole lot. So you got, on the microscopic level, I wish I had a microscope that could show this, but there would be all kinds of communication stuff going on in there. Be a busy little network in there. And I'm really feeling it in my hand now. Okay, so we're almost done. And yeah, it's like it really wants to unwind now. So that's an example. Okay, we can stop now. That's an example of the compression that can affect that change. And it did. It at least hopefully for most of you it did. And we could do the same thing with tension. We worked on this one finger, we pulled it. Let's just do that. Let's just pull on it slightly, not too hard, just to the end range, and just hold it. And see what happens. I can feel tingling in the rest of my fingers. And now it's starting to kind of like creating space. And it's now drifting. I should do this more often. I know I should do this just because, doing massage all day long, it's like this is a really, really good therapy to do. But it's great because I felt it in the wrist, I felt it all around. And now this one's way, way, way more alive than this one is. Now I'm gonna have to do it on the other side. Anyway, so how was that for everybody? How's everybody feeling? Let's see. Good, 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 good. I'm glad to hear it. That's awesome. All right. Well, as I mentioned, there's way more beyond this. And with that kind of a protocol, the next step would actually be marrying an energetic protocol with a myofascial protocol. And to understand what myofascial is versus fascial, if you didn't know the difference, is that myofascial, myo is dealing with muscles. So myofascia is the fascia that surrounds muscles only. So it's a subgroup of fascia. Hopefully that clears some things up. And in actual massage, we're 90% of the time dealing with myofascia. But if you were to marry, let's say, a myofascial release program with a polarity program, well, in some cases they already are. Let's be true. That's the reality. You know, if, for instance, when you're doing Rajasic work, that relates to what's called myofascial rebounding. So it's a similar thing, although you would do it much longer. The periods of time are much longer with myofascia. And then other kinds of things, they all correspond. And, you know, they're really there, but you could indeed go, that would be probably the next step. In fact, I hope to offer a course at some point that would marry those things, which would be great. And if you, hopefully you'd be interested in that. But to date, hopefully this has given you a little bit of a window in to how these come together, how the little inner workings. There's way more in terms of the intricacies of energy and the intricacies of fascia and how they work, but we just didn't have the time to go into that today. But hopefully that's given you some. And what I'd like to do is ask a few questions just to kind of see, to test and see how that landed with you. And maybe you could, if someone want to volunteer and just kind of tell me what the, you know, give me some examples of fascia, of tensegrity, and of how the different lines line up. Anybody want to take a stab? You just go ahead, just unmute yourself and go ahead and say. Anybody?
I'll try. See how good my memory is. So north-south is collagen.
Yes.
East-west is, oh no, the word just went out of my head.
Think stretchy. Think stretchy.
Yes. Oh. Anyway, I'm not going to try, but I wanted to, it'll come back to me. There's, and, you know, because of the stuff I love, the Mabel Ellsworth taught and everything, I think it's in one of her books where she has there's a sketch of the spine showing these different lines, showing how it's really like a suspension bridge and not like building blocks just stacked on top of it. So it was beautiful the way you explained that. That's what the image that came to my mind when you were talking about that. So I really liked that. And I have to say that I never realized, I'm ashamed to say, that there was a difference between myofascial and fascial techniques. I always thought it was all like the same thing, like myofascial, whatever. So there's a lot more I can learn about this. It's really,
I'm glad.
So thank you.
Hey, thank you. Anybody else want to take a stab? Anybody else have the answer to the east-west? Go ahead, Doreen.
That's elastin.
Very good. Very good.
You know, it was so cool when Janet had that reaction of holding in that spot. There's this empirical point in acupuncture that when you put pressure in that area, you release in the neck and you've got more lateral movement. And I thought, wow, just again, the interrelationship.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. That's wonderful. Anybody else have any other, they want to chime in here, or do they have, and we can open it up to questions too. Any questions that you have, just go ahead and speak up.
I have a question. Do nerves run right through the fascia?
They do. They
Thank
do.
you.
Yeah, and part of this electric stuff that we're talking about, when we're talking the spine, we're talking the cerebral spinal fluid. That is all part of this. You know, it's right where we live. You know, we understand this. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah. Hi, Patricia.
Hi. Does this have, this like the pressure, or even just the energy work? Is there any known effects on this for helping nerve stimulation or
Absolutely.
regeneration?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's a little bit of a longer conversation for sure,
Yeah.
but they've shown it, and it depends if it's central nervous system or peripheral nervous system. But clearly, when you have a case of compression of the nerve,
Uh-huh.
extending is going to definitely help that. Number one. I mean, that's right off the bat for sure. But they're also talking about with nerves that you're hydrating the nerve, you're nourishing the nerves, that they can actually come back to some extent. Nerves are very interesting. That's a whole nother animal. But I'm currently, it's funny you asked that, I'm currently experiencing neuropathy.
Oh, wow.
And it's okay, but it's an interesting thing that we're trying to figure out what's causing it, because it doesn't appear to be the usual kinds of things. And I'm working with a functional neurologist. He's a chiropractor in the same vein as, well, if you go back a ways, you talk about Randolph Stone, and when he learned chiropractic, he learned a lot. He learned and worked a lot with a guy named DeJarnette. Well, this is the chiropractic that's taught by him, and it's interesting. But then he's gone into this other neurological stuff, and so he's looking at things on a whole different level. So they're finding out more about nerves all the time. But so far, it's working. It's like it's improving it, and so. You know what I mean? To answer your question, yes, but to go into each and everything, there's a lot there.
Right. Cool. Thanks.
You bet.
We'll talk more about that another time.
You got it, girlfriend.
Cool.
It's also really interesting. There's work by Kiko Matsumoto and Stephen Birch, where they actually connect the fascial planes that they say the acupuncture channels run along the fascial planes. So
Absolutely.
there's definitely that interconnection there.
Yeah, and that's something that's been brought up too that I was aware of. But thank you. I mean, it's like I don't know to what extent, because I don't have the background you do, but it's something that, I mean, even in we know that in polarity that he talks about the etheric energy body is all having to do with these different points that all radiate out and are very much with the elements. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else? Well, I'm so glad that you guys could do this with me today. This was fun. Hopefully you learned something and feel like there was something that you could take home with this. And it sounds like a few people did learn something, and I had a lot of fun telling you guys about it. So I think I'm going to stop the share now. And then, I'm stop the recording now. And then, where is it? I got to find it. Uh-oh.
On the bottom, I think. On the bottom.
I'm looking
It's
for
on the top.
Click the stop button. It's a square on the bottom.
Oh, you know what? I think what happened is when I came out of here, it stopped the recording.
It's still going.
It's still going? I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, you should have like a recording, something saying recording at the
Hi,
top
Lord.
left.
Oh, there it
Hi.
is. There it is. Okay, stop. There, I found it. Yay. Well, thank you guys. I'm so glad that you guys came. Any other questions? Anything, any discussions? Anything you want to share that you learned?
It looks like it's still recording, FYI.
Oh, thank you. I thought I stopped.